Welcome to Hacks of Mind. Little warning. Before we started, this is an immersive video-audio podcast designed to help you break free from overthinking, calm your mind, and reset your focus. You can either watch or just listen, so feel free to just listen while you work, trying to sleep, or watch and let the visuals guide your focus. If your mind is constantly racing, if you're stuck in loops of doubt, overthinking, or anxiety, you're not broken, but your brain is stuck in a pattern. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly why that happens, and the one powerful shift you can make today to finally calm your thoughts and take back control of your mind. Before we dive deeper, take a second to just pause. Wherever you are right now, sitting, walking, lying down, bring your attention to your body. Let your shoulders drop, unclench your jaw, take one slow, deep breath in, and let it go. You don't need to fix everything right now. You just need to be here, in this moment. That's the first step in beating overthinking, coming back to what's real, not what's racing through your head. Now let me show you what's really going on in your mind and how you can take back control. Now let's begin.
Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly achieve their goals, while others remain trapped in endless cycles of self-sabotage? The answer isn't willpower, motivation, or even talent. It's something much more fundamental and much more sinister. It's the invisible war happening inside your mind every single second of every day, and most people don't even know they're fighting it. What I'm about to share with you will fundamentally change how you see yourself, your struggles, and your potential. This isn't just another self-help video. This is about understanding the psychological machinery that either propels you forward or keeps you stuck. And once you see these patterns, you can never unsee them. But here's what's fascinating. The very thing that's been holding you back might actually be your greatest strength in disguise. The overthinking that torments you, the perfectionism that paralyzes you, the self-doubt that whispers in your ear, these aren't character flaws. They're symptoms of a mind that's capable of incredible depth and complexity, but hasn't learned how to harness its own power. Think about it. Your brain, this 3-pound universe inside your skull, processes 11 million bits of information every second, but you're only consciously aware of about 40. That means 99.99% of what's driving your behavior, your emotions, your choices, is happening below the surface of your awareness. You're literally being controlled by forces you can't see, patterns you didn't choose, and programs you didn't write. And this is where overthinking becomes both your curse and your potential superpower. Because the same mind that can spiral into anxiety and analysis paralysis is also the mind capable of seeing connections others miss, of anticipating problems before they arise, of creating solutions that seem to come from nowhere. The question isn't how to stop overthinking. It's how to transform it into something that serves you instead of sabotages you. But most people never learn this transformation because they're fighting the wrong battle. They think the problem is the thoughts themselves, so they try to silence them, suppress them, meditate them away. But here's the truth that will save you years of struggle. You don't need to control your thoughts. You need to understand their purpose and redirect their energy. Every thought that torments you is actually trying to protect you from something. The perfectionism that keeps you from starting is trying to protect you from failure and judgment. The overthinking that keeps you awake at night is trying to solve problems and prevent disasters. The self-doubt that whispers you're not good enough is trying to keep you safe from rejection and disappointment. These mental patterns aren't your enemy. They're misguided allies using outdated strategies to help you survive in a world that no longer requires such extreme vigilance. And once you understand this, everything changes. Instead of being at war with your mind, you become its wise commander. Instead of being overwhelmed by the chaos of thoughts, you become the calm center around which they orbit. Instead of being paralyzed by analysis, you become empowered by insight. The transformation begins when you realize that overthinking isn't a thinking problem at all. It's an energy problem. Your mind is like a powerful river that's been dammed up, creating pressure and turbulence. But when you learn to channel that flow, it becomes a source of incredible power. The same mental energy that creates anxiety can create breakthrough insights. The same attention to detail that creates perfectionist paralysis can create masterful execution. The same sensitivity that creates overwhelm can create profound empathy and understanding. This is why trying to stop overthinking is like trying to stop a river by standing in its path. You'll just get swept away. But when you learn to work with the current instead of against it, when you understand how to direct that mental energy toward creation instead of destruction, toward solutions instead of problems, toward action instead of analysis, that's when everything shifts. Your overthinking mind isn't broken. It's brilliant, it's not weak, it's incredibly powerful. It's just been aiming in the wrong direction. And today, we're going to learn how to redirect that aim, how to transform the very thing that's been your greatest source of suffering into your greatest source of strength. Because the truth is, the world needs overthinkers. It needs people who see the details others miss, who ask the questions others don't think to ask, who feel deeply and think complexly about the challenges we face. What the world doesn't need is overthinkers who are paralyzed by their own gifts, trapped in their own brilliance, suffering from their own sensitivity. So if you've ever felt like your mind is both your greatest asset and your worst enemy, if you've ever wondered why you can solve everyone else's problems but remain stuck in your own patterns, if you've ever wished you could just turn off the constant stream of thoughts and worries and analysis, then you're exactly where you need to be. Because transformation isn't about becoming someone different. It's about becoming who you really are when you're not fighting yourself. The journey we're about to take together will show you how to honor your complex mind while freeing yourself from its prison, how to embrace your depth while finding your peace, how to think brilliantly without thinking destructively. This isn't about changing who you are. It's about unleashing who you've always been beneath the chaos and the noise and the endless mental chatter. Are you ready to meet the person you become when you stop fighting your mind and start partnering with it? Are you ready to discover what happens when overthinking transforms from a burden into a superpower? Now that you understand the mind's power and how to partner with it rather than fight it, we're ready to explore how this transformation actually happens. The shift from mental chaos to inner mastery doesn't occur through willpower alone, but through understanding the deeper mechanics of how your mind operates and learning to work with its natural intelligence. Your overthinking isn't a malfunction waiting to be fixed. It's a sophisticated system that's been running outdated software. Think of it like having a supercomputer that's still trying to run programs designed for a much simpler world. The hardware is extraordinary, but the operating system needs an upgrade. The first thing you need to understand is that your mind has been shaped by millions of years of evolution to prioritize survival over happiness. This means it's naturally wired to scan for threats, anticipate problems, and prepare for worst-case scenarios. In our ancestors' world, this hypervigilance kept them alive. In your world, it creates the endless loops of worry and analysis that feel so exhausting. But here's what changes everything. That same mental energy that creates overthinking is the exact same energy that creates breakthrough insights, creative solutions, and deep understanding. It's not the energy that's the problem, it's how you're directing it. Most people try to calm their minds by suppressing thoughts or forcing themselves to think positively. This is like trying to stop a river by building a dam. The pressure just builds until something breaks. Instead, you want to learn how to redirect that mental river towards something useful and fulfilling. The transformation begins when you realize that your thoughts aren't facts, they're events. Just like clouds passing through the sky, thoughts arise, exist for a moment, and then dissolve. You don't have to grab onto every thought that appears. You don't have to follow every mental thread to its conclusion. You can observe your thinking without being consumed by it. This shift in perspective is profound because it means you're no longer at the mercy of your thoughts. Instead of being the victim of your overthinking, you become the conscious observer of your mental processes. From this vantage point, you can start to see patterns, recognize triggers, and make different choices about where to focus your attention. The key is learning to distinguish between productive thinking and mental spinning. Productive thinking moves you towards solutions, insights, or understanding. Mental spinning just creates more confusion and anxiety without leading anywhere useful. When you catch yourself spinning, you can gently redirect your attention to something more constructive. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about becoming more yourself. Your analytical nature, your depth of processing, your ability to see multiple perspectives, these are all gifts. The goal isn't to eliminate these qualities, but to harness them more skillfully. Think of a master musician. They don't fight against their instrument or try to force it to make beautiful sounds. They work with the natural properties of the instrument, understanding its capabilities and limitations. And through practice and skill, they create something beautiful. Your mind is your instrument, and overthinking is simply the sound it makes when it's not being played with skill and intention. The practice begins with small moments of awareness. Notice when your mind starts spiraling. Notice the physical sensations that accompany overthinking. Notice the emotional undercurrent. But don't judge these observations or try to change them immediately. Just notice. This simple act of noticing creates space between you and your thoughts. And in that space, choice becomes possible. From this foundation of awareness, you can begin to experiment with different ways of engaging with your thoughts. Sometimes you might choose to follow a line of thinking because it's genuinely useful. Other times you might choose to let thoughts pass by without engagement. The key is that it becomes a choice rather than an automatic reaction. This is where your transformation from mental chaos to inner mastery truly begins. Not through force or suppression, but through understanding, skill, and the gradual development of a different relationship with your own mind. You're not trying to think less. You're learning to think better, with more intention and less compulsion. Your overthinking mind isn't your enemy. It's a powerful ally that's been running on autopilot. Now that you've built the foundation of understanding how thoughts work and how to redirect them skillfully, we're ready to explore the deeper mechanics of transforming overthinking into your greatest asset. This is where the real transformation happens, not by fighting your mind, but by becoming its master architect. Most people experience overthinking as an avalanche. One worry triggers another, which triggers another, until they're buried under an unstoppable mental landslide. But here's what changes everything. Every cascade starts with a single thought, and that thought always has a specific trigger pattern. Your mind isn't randomly generating chaos. It's following predictable pathways that were carved by repetition, emotion, and association. The person who overthinks about relationships does so because their mind has learned to scan for threats to connection. The person who spirals about work performance has trained their brain to detect potential failure signals. These aren't character flaws. They're sophisticated early warning systems that have become hyperactive. The transformation begins when you stop seeing overthinking as the enemy and start recognizing it as misdirected intelligence. Your overthinking mind is actually demonstrating remarkable capabilities: pattern recognition, scenario planning, risk assessment, creative problem solving. The issue isn't that these abilities exist, it's that they're running without conscious direction. This is where the concept of mental architecture becomes crucial. Just as a skilled architect doesn't fight against the properties of materials, but works with them to create something beautiful and functional, you must learn to work with your mind's natural tendencies rather than against them. The goal isn't to think less, it's to think more strategically. Consider the difference between a river that floods chaotically and one that's been channeled to power a city. Same water, same force, completely different outcomes. Your overthinking mind has tremendous power. It just needs proper channels. Your brain has limited processing capacity, and overthinking typically happens when this capacity is being used inefficiently. Imagine trying to run multiple complex programs on an old computer. Everything slows down, crashes become frequent, and simple tasks become impossible. Most people's minds are running dozens of background programs simultaneously. Unresolved concerns, suppressed emotions, incomplete decisions, and unconscious fears. These programs consume mental resources even when you're not actively aware of them. It's like having 50 browser tabs open on your mental computer. No wonder everything feels sluggish and overwhelming. The solution isn't to force quit everything at once, which would be like randomly shutting down programs without saving your work. Instead, you need to become the conscious administrator of your mental operating system. This means learning to close loops, complete cycles, and archive information in ways that free up processing power for what truly requires your attention. Here's where most approaches to overthinking fail. They treat thoughts as the problem rather than understanding that thoughts are often the symptom of unresolved emotional or energetic states. You can't think your way out of an emotional problem any more than you can reason with a crying child by explaining why their tears are illogical. The most persistent overthinking patterns are usually rooted in what I call emotional incompletions. Situations where your system experienced something significant but never fully processed it. This could be a conversation where you didn't say what you really meant, a decision you made that doesn't align with your values, or an experience that challenged your sense of safety or worth. These incompletions create what psychologists call open loops. Mental processes that continue running in the background because they never reached resolution. Your mind keeps returning to them not to torture you, but because it's trying to complete something that feels unfinished. Understanding this changes your relationship with persistent thoughts entirely. Instead of fighting the thought, you start asking different questions. What is this thought trying to complete? What does my system need to process here? This approach transforms you from a victim of your thoughts into an investigator working with them. These are structured ways of helping your mind process and file away information so it stops running active searches in the background. This might involve writing to clarify your thoughts, having conversations to express what was previously unexpressed, or making decisions about situations you've been avoiding. But here's the deeper insight that separates this approach from simple productivity techniques. The goal isn't just mental efficiency, it's about reclaiming your inherent capacity for presence, creativity, and authentic response to life. When your mind isn't constantly churning through background processes, you become available for the kind of deep engagement that makes life meaningful. This is where overthinking transforms from a liability into an asset. That same mind that was spiraling about problems becomes incredibly powerful when directed toward creation, innovation, and genuine insight. The person who used to get lost in worst-case scenarios becomes the one who can anticipate challenges and create elegant solutions. The mind that was trapped in analysis paralysis becomes capable of nuanced thinking that others find remarkable. The key is learning to distinguish between productive thinking and mental spinning. Productive thinking has direction, purpose, and typically leads to either insight, decision, or action. Mental spinning is circular, repetitive, and creates more confusion rather than clarity. Once you can recognize the difference, you can interrupt spinning and redirect that energy toward genuinely useful thinking. This redirection isn't about forced positivity or trying to think different thoughts. It's about becoming conscious of how you're using your mental energy and making choices about where to direct it. It's the difference between being carried away by a current and learning to navigate the river skillfully. The ultimate insight is that overthinking often emerges from a disconnection between your conscious mind and your deeper wisdom. When you're trying to figure everything out mentally, you're often bypassing other forms of intelligence: intuitive, somatic, emotional, spiritual. The mind becomes hyperactive when it's trying to do jobs that other aspects of your being are better equipped to handle. Reconnecting with these other forms of intelligence doesn't mean abandoning rational thinking. It means allowing your rational mind to work in partnership with your full range of inner resources. This creates a kind of thinking that's both more efficient and more aligned with who you really are. When this integration happens, overthinking naturally transforms into what you might call wise thinking, mental activity that emerges from and serves your authentic self rather than your fears and conditioning. This is thinking that enhances your life rather than depleting it, that opens possibilities rather than closing them down. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it begins the moment you shift from fighting your mind to understanding and skillfully working with it. Every time you redirect mental energy from spinning to something constructive, you're literally rewiring your brain toward greater wisdom and effectiveness. The result isn't a mind that's empty or passive, but one that's dynamically responsive to what's actually happening in your life. You become someone who can think deeply when deep thinking is called for, and be present when presence is what's needed. The modern mind has become a battleground where thoughts spiral endlessly, creating what feels like mental quicksand. The harder you struggle against your thinking patterns, the deeper you sink into cycles of worry, analysis, and second-guessing. But what if I told you that overthinking isn't actually a problem to be solved, but rather a misunderstood gift that's been misdirected? You see, the very capacity that creates overthinking is the same capacity that drives innovation, creativity, and deep understanding. The issue isn't that you think too much, it's that your thinking has become untethered from purpose and wisdom. Most approaches to overthinking treat it like a disease to be cured, but this misses the fundamental truth. Your mind's depth and complexity are actually superpowers that simply need better direction. Think about it this way. The greatest thinkers, artists, and innovators throughout history weren't people who thought less. They were people who thought differently. They understood how to harness their mental energy rather than being consumed by it. They learned to distinguish between productive contemplation and destructive rumination, between strategic analysis and paralyzing perfectionism. The real transformation begins when you stop seeing your active mind as an enemy and start recognizing it as an ally that's been operating without proper guidance. This isn't about shutting down your thoughts or forcing yourself into some artificial state of mental emptiness. It's about upgrading your relationship with your own thinking process, learning to direct your mental energy like a master craftsperson wielding a precision tool. Your overthinking patterns didn't develop overnight, and they won't disappear with simple tricks or surface-level techniques. They're the result of deeply ingrained neural pathways, emotional patterns, and ways of processing the world that may have served you at one point but have now become counterproductive. The path forward requires understanding these patterns at their root level and systematically rewiring them through conscious, intentional practice. We're going to dive into the actual mechanics of how overthinking operates, why it feels so compelling, even when it's causing suffering, and most importantly, how to transform this mental energy into something that serves your highest good. The journey we're embarking on will take you through 4 essential phases of transformation. First, we'll uncover the hidden drivers behind your thinking patterns, helping you understand why your mind operates the way it does and what it's really trying to accomplish through all that mental activity. Second, we'll explore how to shift from being a victim of your thoughts to becoming their conscious director, learning to engage with your thinking process rather than being overwhelmed by it. Third, we'll delve into the art of redirecting your mental energy towards strategic, purposeful thinking that actually moves you forward in life, rather than keeping you stuck in endless loops. And finally, we'll integrate everything into a sustainable approach that transforms overthinking from a source of suffering into a wellspring of clarity, creativity, and wise action. This transformation isn't about becoming a different person. It's about becoming the fullest expression of who you already are. Your capacity for deep thought, your sensitivity to nuance, your ability to see patterns and connections that others miss. These aren't flaws to be corrected. They're gifts to be refined and directed with wisdom. The very fact that you overthink reveals something profound about your nature. You care deeply about getting things right. You're attuned to complexity and subtlety. You have a rich inner world and a sophisticated way of processing information. These qualities, when properly channeled, become tremendous assets rather than sources of torment. But here's what most people don't understand about overthinking. It's not actually about the thoughts themselves. The thoughts are just the surface manifestation of something much deeper. Unresolved emotional energy, unconscious beliefs about safety and control, and patterns of engagement with uncertainty that your psyche developed to protect you, but that now limit you. When you try to stop overthinking by fighting the thoughts directly, you're essentially trying to solve the problem at the wrong level. It's like trying to fix a computer by wiping the screen when the issue is in the operating system. The real work happens at the level of understanding what drives the thinking patterns and consciously upgrading those underlying programs. This is why willpower alone never works for overcoming overthinking. You can't simply decide to stop overthinking any more than you can decide to stop feeling hungry when your body needs nutrition. The overthinking is serving a function, meeting some need, or attempting to resolve some internal conflict. Until you address that deeper layer, the thoughts will keep coming back, no matter how hard you try to suppress them. What we're going to do instead is far more elegant and effective. We're going to work with your mind's natural intelligence, understanding its patterns and motivations, and then gradually redirect that intelligence toward more productive and satisfying pursuits. This approach honors the sophistication of your mental processes while guiding them toward greater wisdom and effectiveness. The transformation happens through a combination of understanding, practice, and patience. Understanding helps you see clearly what's actually happening in your mental landscape, rather than being lost in the fog of endless thoughts. Practice gives you the tools and techniques to work skillfully with your mind's energy. And patience allows the new patterns to solidify and become your new normal way of being. This isn't a quick fix or a life hack. It's a fundamental upgrade to how you relate to your own consciousness. The results, however, are profound and lasting. When you learn to direct your mental energy with wisdom and purpose, not only does the suffering of overthinking dissolve, but you also gain access to levels of clarity, creativity, and effectiveness that you may never have experienced before. Your overthinking mind is like a powerful river that's currently flooding its banks and causing destruction. Our work together is to build proper channels for that river, directing its immense energy toward nourishing the landscape of your life rather than washing it away. The water itself, your mental energy, is not the problem. The lack of proper direction and containment is what creates the chaos. As we move forward in this exploration, you'll begin to notice something remarkable happening. The very qualities that make you prone to overthinking, your depth, your sensitivity, your capacity for complex analysis, will start revealing themselves as sources of strength and wisdom. You'll discover that you don't need to become a different type of person to be free from the suffering of overthinking. You simply need to become more skillfully yourself. The path ahead requires courage because it asks you to question some fundamental assumptions about how your mind works and what thinking is actually for. It requires compassion because you'll be working with patterns that developed as attempts to protect and care for yourself, even if they're no longer serving you. And it requires patience because real transformation happens gradually, layer by layer, as new ways of being integrate into your lived experience. But most of all, this path requires trust. Trust in your own capacity for growth and change. Trust in the process of conscious development. And trust that your mind's natural intelligence, when properly guided, will lead you toward greater freedom and fulfillment. Your overthinking isn't a life sentence. It's simply a starting point for a journey toward mental mastery and inner peace. The adventure of transforming your relationship with your own mind begins now, with the recognition that everything you need for this transformation already exists within you. Your job isn't to acquire something new, but to uncover and refine what's already there, waiting to be discovered and expressed with greater wisdom and skill.